His work reflects both his extensive study of Oriental artists and the influence of Impressionists such as Van Gogh and Monet. He's lived in Kelowna for 33 or 34 years. Alex.
My daughter is 34. She was 2 when we came. 32.
So 32 years you've been here. That's a long time. Did you know that the Rotary Center for the Arts actually have a gallery named Alex Fong Galleria? It's named after Alex. And did you know that, I think it was 2017, Alex received the Queen's Jubilee Medal of Her Royal Heart. Oh, I can't say it. Her Royal Highness 50th anniversary, where citizens are awarded the medal. And in Alex's case, it was for public service. Pretty impressive, Alex. He loves cooking. He loves his wife. He loves his kids. And he loves painting. That's his passion, is his painting. Is there anything you'd like to add about yourself, Alex?
Well, I've never had a job for 43 years. I've never had a paycheck per se. But I think I like painting more now than it's been a struggle. Being an artist, being a professional is hard work and not always easy, especially when you're raising kids and you have an ex that loves horses. Kid could attest to that. He was a coach for years for my daughter and my ex. But I love painting more than I used to. I think the most difficult part about any job, I think, is just trying to make it work and pay for it. I like painting, but the pursuit of as a career is the hard part. And you can ask musicians and anybody that's has a job that the business of whatever they do is probably the most difficult. But I'm lucky to do this for a living. And most of the time I'm happy to be an artist. So. The last time I was here, I didn't forget I picked the wrong day. So I was supposed to be here on Monday night. I was coming on Tuesday. So I dropped my fork and I ran to my truck and loaded up and made it just about in time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you. Hi, everybody. There must be a lot of people, it's a smaller group. But,
yes, it's the first back after the summers.
Right, everybody's kind of getting sorted out.
To get people, yes.
So what I'm going to do today is is this going to move just a touch?
Where do you want it?
I'm just going to move it this way because I'm going to demonstrate on here, and I want to show you my initial process. Okay, so this is actually where I'm going to go with the piece that is underneath here. Okay. It's for demonstrations, you can't do as much as you'd like to, just because of time. So for today, I'd like to show you how I begin a painting. But this is basically the stage where I'm going to go to on my demo. There's a combination of the 3 colors, red, yellow, and blue. In my case, it's a alizarin crimson, cobalt blue, and raw sienna. Now they're all transparent, but they all are basically the primary colors that you would work with. So you can make all your colors from the red, yellow, and blue. The most essential part, and I've said this before, but it bears reminding that, with watercolor, your light is the surface of the painting. So all my whites and lights are derived from just the surface of the paper. And So what I'm going to do is, this is essentially where we're going with the underpainting. So I have some quail and some vineyards. We were talking about wine. You didn't mention I really like wine.
Big oversight.
I like my wife, I love my kids, but I love wine too. So as you can see, I when I started painting 45 years ago, I took interior design and I fell in love with watercolor painting. We were introduced to that in our rendering class, and I was looking for something to mix my paint. So I've been recycling for 45 years. All these are just the bottoms of milk cartons.
That's part of where the kids came in, drink that milk.
Well, I did drink milk back more then.
But your kids would have, so you would have had lots.
I had a lot more of those containers. But my wife actually, she puts milk in her coffee. I drink my coffee black. That's where I got all these little ones. So watercolor, the most important element we have is the light and water. It's supposed to be a nice clean brush, but it's not super clean. I'll just do a halo effect. So no way to really show this at the same time.
Oh, we could put it across the top of this table.
Just so you can get an idea where I'm going. Okay.
Should work.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
You can see at the top of the painting, the light has much more of a halo effect. There's no hard edges. So the clean water helps to establish some color without any hard edges. Clean water always helps to soften up edges. So I don't have a lot of rules, but one of the rules that I have is that you should just try to have a nice, clean, absolutely clean brush on hand. So you saw that hard edge was developing there. If you have a brush that's pure, clean water, it'll always be able to go in there and soften up an edge.
One thing that people at home can't see is that you've got a towel draped over there that you're just dabbing your brush on to dry it off if you need to. Right?
Yeah, a lot of it, you know, those little things, there's just when you actually have a towel, you can actually take some of the moisture out of your brush. So it's kind of one of those little things that if you're not paying attention, you just saw. Yeah. And the table, I'll push down and squeeze some of the paint out so there isn't as much. It's the moisture and the level of wet and dryness is going to influence how your painting is going to turn out. So. And what I'm doing is I'm going to pick up a little of the blue. And what happens is because the brush acts like a sponge, it picks up a little color and it pushes the other color up and blends it as well. So it's when I first started painting, we were talking just before the session started. I actually taught myself how to paint by going to the library and I found out that I really like watercolor. I found out that I found some books in the library and I just picked artists that I liked. Didn't do a lot of reading. I just looked at the pictures and figured it out. And that means that all the influence that I have as a painter is just by picking the artists that you like and kind of working them into your style. So much of what I do now is self-taught. So it's very loose. And it's all I'm trying to do is actually accentuate the white of the paper. And if you don't know what's going into an area, leave it white. You can always put color in, but it's impossible to get it absolutely white again. So just leave it pure and white, and then you can put color in the way you feel it should end up looking.
You've also got some areas on there that you put, what, I don't know what that's called, that rubber curve.
Rubber masking.
Okay,
Yeah, I do a thing I've been doing since I started painting. My paintings have what I call, these dots are called confetti. So I associate that with the celebration. But, you know, traditionally artists, going back centuries, have always used color to accentuate, highlight different areas. Painters do it in different ways. I just do it in a very obvious way. And so the masking fluid, some of the masking, it helps to delineate some of the grapes, but they also help to just add some color. So what I try to do when I'm picking the color that's going into a particular area is the opposite of purple and blue is orange and yellow. So I'll take the complements, the opposite color, and to help the viewers to stimulate their eye, I'll put the opposite color in there. And it's just a little hit of a contrast throughout the entire painting. So the light is coming through here. I'll just leave this light white to reflect the light. Woody brush.
Alex, I can't quite see it. Do you have any sketch?
Yes, there's a, oh, you can't see that. Yes, there's a couple quail and all the vineyards, the grape leaves.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you know where you want it.
Oh, you can't see that.
Well, I can.
Yeah, so
Just barely, yeah.
yes, it's very, I'm sorry, I should have maybe perhaps explained that. Yes, I use HB pencil. It's not too soft, not too hard, and it's pre-drawn. So this is essentially a just big paper number. You can't see the numbers either.
So one of the benefits of being here in person is if you guys want to stand up at any point and look over Alex's shoulder coat.
Yeah.
For those of you at home, oh well.
Yeah.
so how are you deciding your colors? I guess you know what color you want each thing to be.
It's fairly simple, but there's a kind of a freeness. I'm not really trying to be following the lines. I just kind of, when the colors come together, you'll find that they create other shapes other than your pencil. drawing.
Mhm.
So then you don't pay attention to the pencil, you pay attention to the way the colors have evolved on the painting.
Go with the flow.
Exactly. Wish I had said that.
Alex, does it make any difference if you're using hot pressed or cold pressed?
It certainly does, but then, it's actually not a difference maker so much as it's personal taste. I don't like hot press, it's too smooth. I like rough as opposed to even cold press because it has more texture. I like
Okay.
that bite, that the sense that there's as the surface has got a little more tooth to it. I feel like it's kind of, I can feel it as
Right.
opposed to the smooth. So, it's a very much a personal taste thing.
So do you use 140 pound or?
Actually 300 pound, this is 300 pound arches. And I actually, this is a board, watercolor board. The arches used to make a watercolor board. They've since discontinued it. They made it for about 10, 12, 15 years. And it was fantastic. You get a 30 by 40 inch sheet. It's all, you can cut it to whatever size. And then, when you staple it down, not too many, you don't have to staple them nearly as close together. And it's, once you varnish, my paintings are all varnished. And once they're done, they go directly into a frame, just like an oil painting. But the unfortunate part is that they discontinued because I think there's just not enough people like the surface. But I do have my art supply place in Calgary, Swinton's, and he actually takes 300 pound or 400 pound watercolor paper. It's 40 by 60, and he dry mounts it to a stiff board. And so I get a big, gigantic sheet, and again, it just acts like the same thing. You get a big surface, you cut up and make into smaller ones. This process that I'm doing right now, I'm kind of talking a lot, so it goes a little faster when you're
focusing.
you're not reacting to talking too much.
It looks like it's going pretty quickly as it is.
Well, yeah. I didn't bring it, but I have a sponge at home. And oftentimes at any point of the painting, you can take a brush and squeeze out some of the color to bring back the light and the contrast. And then what I do is I just let this sit. I do actually kind of pay attention to some of the edges and smooth out some of those. But what happens at this juncture is that the painting has a bit of its own personality, so you just allow nature to kind of see where the marks end up and dry. You can help it along, but the great thing about watercolor is that it's like an act of God, and it just does its own thing. And it's like watching a puddle of water dry, and you just never know how things are going to turn out. But the drawing here does help to give you some ideas about, you can't see this, but there's a line here. So I'm just helping some of the shapes develop a little bit. There's two quail here. This is a vineyard in the background, so very reminiscent of this look. And in fact, well, this is reversed, but this is the girl quail and the boy quail. Yeah. Details. And the vines are coming down. Okay. So let's get a little closer. You see the pencil lines?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So is it
Hmm.
fairly loose?
Yes, thank you.
That's better. I should have shown that a little sooner.
Do you,
Just,
do you find there's any seasonality in what you choose to paint? Like right now, it's fall, the vineyards are all around.
I think, as we're trying to do this and make a living, I found that the Okanagan love quail. I can't sell a quail painting in my gallery in Invermere or anything. But they really like winter scenes, getting close to Calgary. So and buying winter scenes does not happen. It is a seasonal thing. Most people do like winter paintings in the winter. And for instance, I was at Art Walk and I had some quail pieces, not quail, sorry, the whale pieces. And perhaps they just didn't want a whale painting, or perhaps is because Okanagan people were drawn to Okanagan feelings and ideas and images. So, yes, you always second guess yourself when you're painting,
Yeah,
and when you're trying to sell your paintings.
yeah.
But I tell you, when I first started painting, I was living in Vancouver and I was showing in Vancouver and doing okay. But then I joined a group of painters and we started showing in Calgary. And my first show was a disaster. I sold one painting. So I had to go home, I had my kids, I had to tell them that. Anyways, it was not a happy story. But I went back the following year and I actually sold 19 watercolors.
Wow.
So Calgary has it saved my life, it saved my business. It was a great market to go to. But it took time for people to understand watercolor. The oil painters did very well. Sculpture always did well, bronzes did well, but watercolors were almost like a kind of a mystery. And I stuck to it, still my favorite medium, but it's a learning process. It's always going to be a difficult thing. Photography right now is a difficult medium to tell people about. There's right here, I was going to connect it, but actually, if I have another leaf going down there, it doesn't matter. So you can see that the images, the color is very light. So this is the underpainting, and all my subsequent painting will go on top. So whatever marks you want to make, they'll actually cover up the pencil. Here, for your benefit, there's the close-up of the now, this is just going to dry.
Do you fix the underpainting before you do the painting over it? Do you do some kind of?
Sometimes you do, but because it's so light, and the underpainting, when it has that color already, when you're actually just working on a white surface, you're just filling up space. You have to fill in every space. The benefit of doing an underpainting is that you have this overall color. So I can I'll demonstrate. Because there's color here, I don't have to color in the entire painting. I can actually just color in the contrast or the areas that I want to create the shapes. So that was probably difficult to understand, but I'll try to demonstrate. Yeah, you see, it's establishing a light,
Yeah.
and it's just producing some contrast in the shapes. And it wasn't strictly paying attention to the drawing itself. It just kind of evolves. It takes on a life of its own. And you'll find that even if you do this, and you say you're gonna paint quail, if the underpainting turns into something else, you can totally go another direction. Certainly, I could actually, if it was going the right way, I could introduce whales. You know, I could change the whole idea from the Okanagan to another place.
What was the subject matter that sold in Calgary?
I did a lot of landscapes. You know, my beginning when I started painting was I liked to reflect my heritage. So the Chinese, I called it Oriental, contemporary Oriental. So it was somewhat a little bit had a contemporary feel to it, but there was kind of a Chinese feeling to it. So there was a lot of landscapes. It wasn't until I started doing some work for Quailsgate Winery that I started painting quail. I didn't even know about them until they asked me to do the work for them. I just drank beer and scotch, and then I discovered that I like wine and now bitter. It's
So now you haven't sealed the underpainting.
no, not at all. But when the painting is done, then I spray it with this spray varnish. And that fixes the painting. And then you can apply more coats of varnish on top. The painting is still water soluble until you cover it up. But once it's done, then all these surfaces are they have a UV protection in the varnish. So it actually acts as a better than just as good as glass.
I'm just showing my ignorance on watercolor. I just don't know how you get such tight, straight lines
Oh,
with, because I watched everything there flow, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all, it
Right.
moved.
yeah.
My paper.
How do you get a tight line?
Well, when the surface is dry, and I'll demonstrate now. When the surface is dry, then you're going to get hard edges,
Okay.
and it's not until it's wet like that where everything just flows. What I tend to do though with my watercolor style is that I work on one area and I develop I succeed in that one area and carry on. So mine is like a patchwork quilt. I find a success and then so I'll work here and then I'll keep on progressing until, you know, I get it. Once you know how strong the colors are here, then the kind of is a guideline for how strong the colors continue along the way.
Is varnish something that you've always done with your watercolor?
I've done it for about over 20 years.
Okay.
But before that, I was framing everything under glass. It weighed a ton, it broke, it cuts, was not fun. So
Right.
it's now this just becomes like I frame everything just like an oil painting or an acrylic.
I think that's excellent.
And you know, the one thing about watercolor is it dries 25 to 50% lighter than when it's wet. So when you're varnishing, no different than a piece of wood, you're enhancing the color and you're enriching intensifying the finish.
Okay.
Then you're getting actually my colors are kind of washed out a little bit, but once you varnish them, then what it does is it brings back that luster, deepens the intensity.
Nice.
So does the varnish ever cause it to run or anything?
Oh, in the early days, before I used the spray, it ran like crazy. Or you just had to varnish really fast because everything is still water soluble. And so when you're dragging your varnish over onto the brush, if you're not light-handed, it can go right through, get this big line right through the middle of your work. So I learned to do it quickly, but spraying it does help to prepare the surface for subsequent orange. So the thing about watercolor is, again, it's all about the light. And so we'll just shut up and paint. I always say that's what my wife tells me.
I have a question about your working kind of patchwork. So I'm looking at the painting behind you and it's absolutely consistent all the way through. How do you maintain the absolutely consistent kind of color and darkness and all that if you're doing it like that?
Yeah, well, one of the things that it looks consistent, but you know, if you look in nature, green it changes from leaf to leaf. So I never worry about the color being like the other color. And in fact, I'm looking for nuances and differences. So I try.
But overall, you've got nuance and difference within each section,
Yeah.
but within the whole painting, all your nuances and differences are consistent.
Yes.
throughout.
And that's what you try to, that's why I say, if you have success in one area, then you want to, that encourages you to do more successful areas.
So you have big pools of paint that you've already mixed up. You're not mixing each section
No,
differently.
No, and that's one of the things that I've always, I liken this to cooking. So if you do your, when you're preparing for your paint, this is all waiting for color. But I spent a bit of time pre-mixing my greens, and I have these, which help to move the color.
And you have enough for the whole painting.
Not the whole painting, but at least for that one session, that 1 8-hour or 6-hour period, you have, and then you're not, muddy paintings happen because sometimes you're actually panicking and you're going to mix color because you don't have it.
Right.
So most important thing is to, it's kind of a rule, but is to have your color prepared ahead of time, because nothing's going to burn like in the kitchen. You have all your things, all you do is just put it all together. So I'll take this, I'll work on the, well, I'll work on the quail. So what I try to do is, it's always a matter of dark against light. And what I try to do is work with a lot of gradation in my work. So for instance, I just do an example of gradation here. If I have a leaf, I start off with some color. I drop in some darker color. And what I mean by gradation is working from light, the source, light to dark. So I'll take some of that yellow and I'll and this here is light gradating to dark. And you can add some of that color. And I'll work on this until I get a satisfactory finish to it. The other, I do a lot of mixed media. So this is a whole variety of inks and acrylics. And I take whatever color you like. And this one is actually an ink. It's very strong, but if you take just a little dab of it and place it in there, it's like turning on a light bulb.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually, it looks very orange, but if you let it run, as it lightens up, it's like the light turning on in the painting. And I found this color, oh, that's a good one, I like this one. And so we all are going to find colors that we are drawn to. But you see how the orange is there, but as it runs, it softens up, but it becomes a very bright yellow orange. And you can see that the light is hitting the top of the leaf, and then the color comes around to darker color underneath. This one is, this is called, this FW. It's an acrylic ink. This particular color is Amarillo India. So it's just, when you go to the, we all subject to going to the art store and buying stuff, things that you like. So you find colors that you like, you find iridescent colors, these guys sparkle to them. I use, this is gold. So if you take that is a dab of iridescent gold paint. And when you put that onto your painting, and you can take some water and just kind of creates more texture. What the clean water does is it blows those little particles that are floating in that area, it blows them around. You're also influencing the amount of time it dries. So as you add more water, it's going to take longer to dry. And you see those little backgrounds, these little kind of natural, where color kind of, it's all part of that process, and it's all subject to the way we want to see the world, people to see our paintings. But you see the gold here. This is 24 karat gold, and that is the gold out of the tube. And when you put that onto your painting, it reflects the light. So you've added reflection, a little bit of, we'd like gold leaf on our paintings, or that's the same thing. Everybody, I can see your ring in front of you, earrings. It's just adding a little bling.
So is
Anything.
that acrylic gold?
Yes, it's out of the, it's just a squirt of this.
Mhm.
And the way I work with it is I actually just put a squirt in the container, and then I cover it with water.
Wow.
And it'll last for 3 days. You can have a little dab here and there.
I'm surprised it doesn't dissipate. I would have thought it would have just dissolved.
It will. It will after a couple days. It's kind of melts, and then you have to just add more to it. And this is acrylic. This is a dab of white. And what this does is it, if you look at my paintings, especially for snow scene, it's instant snow. So it's instant sparkle too. Most of my paintings have a little bit of acrylic
nice.
sparkling, and it changes again. It's messing with the amount of time that the paint takes to dry. It adds a bit of a white sparkle, and it's acrylic, so it's actually plastic. When it dries, it pushes the color away even more.
Do you ever use a palette knife and sort of scrape? down
Yeah.
to get-
I don't use it as much. I don't scrape as much as, but it's always means to a successful end. So if I need it, I'll scrape. Because what it does is it scores the paper, and the paint sinks in, get a darker line. But if you want some of this color in your painting, you just have to get it, buy it, and it's really makes it for a lot of fun.
Well, it's cool that you can mix these acrylics with the watercolor.
In the American Watercolor Society regards acrylic as watercolor. They don't say this is that and that is. They actually, it's just the same thing. It's just watercolor. Yeah. So now with this light edge, if you put dark color against it, it's always going to be a matter of when you ask about consistency, you want consistent light, which is one light source, that's consistent shadows. And you're always going to be working from light to dark. Because even if you take a look at the lights in the ceiling, there is a strong light and then it emanates out. And that's the gradation that I'm always trying to create. And the more gradation you put in the painting, the more feeling you're going to have light infused into your work. So when you take this and you know that the light source is creating shadows, and you just throw in more color to make sure that you got that strength of color. So light against dark, we'll take some of this dark color. This palette here is, I had it 45 years ago. I bought it when I went to the Bay and I bought a breakfast tray. I still have it, and it still has paint from 45 years ago. I've never washed it. And I've always said you get a hold of a Rembrandt watercolor, you can still mess with it if you want to. You wouldn't do it.
Be expensive.
It'll be- I don't like that part, so I'm just going to change it.
Yeah.
So, as I say, dark. This dark is going to accentuate that corner of light. And you see I'm creating the same pattern of extra dark against light in vineyard. So I'll just leave a little bit of the underpainting there. And these colors here add to move and add moisture. As you're painting, some of these areas are going to dry up more quickly. So I'll just take a dab of alizarin crimson, drop it in there. That helps to perk it up. The most successful part of your painting is going to work when it's wet. You can always keep on adding a little bit more color when it's wet. As soon as it dries, you can certainly paint over it, but you can actually this is a shiny blue. You just drop it in there. And if you looked at it underneath a magnifying glass, you'd see it was iridescent. It has kind of a shine to it.
So do you ever get blooms that you don't want?
Yeah.
And what do you do?
I leave them. Or I cover them up. You know, one of the great things about all this acrylic is that, you know, not only does it create different textures, but it also works to cover it up. You know, and historically, white is, Chinese didn't do this kind of a light. They painted the white on top of the painting. So this is I like the use of the light of the paper to create my light. But I'm not opposed to fixing what is not, doesn't look good.
Oscar.
That's where there are no rules. I think, you know, the most important thing for us is that we have a painting that we feel succeeded, and whatever it takes to create that sense of success is so much more rewarding for a painter. So every work is like a work in progress. Even these paintings that are done, you can take a look at them and say, they need a little hit of a little more color or even total change. I've taken the white and I've kind of glossed over areas and then I rework them. And so it's
Once you varnish though, I guess you can't do
I
it.
didn't bring it, but it's golden okay, you get the golden spray
Okay.
in the can.
Yeah.
You get a Krylon, which is cheaper, but works well. And so it does have UV in it. And then once it's sprayed, I take golden mixed liquid varnish. It's quite thick. So what I do is I do about a 50-50 to cut it down. So it's just more soft, and you can use it as it is. It's quite thick though.
But you're painting that, that's not spray.
That's with a brush.
So, because the other varnish is, it's a oil, or it's a,
Acrylic.
it is an acrylic, but
Yeah.
a spray, it's a varnish too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
But you can't paint with watercolor once you varnish.
No, it doesn't really. There is a ground that you can buy, which is adds a kind of a watercolor surface to it. It gives you kind of like a hot press feeling to it. So you can actually paint that on and then apply watercolor. But I like the ability to just take that painting and put acrylic on there. And you get really instant success too. Get the color, it's strong. As I say, watercolor dries 25 to 50% lighter. So then you've got to put more paint on to get the desired effect.
So in other words, once you've varnished it, if you need to do some little thing, you just do it.
Yeah. And you find that, you know, the acrylic looks a little flat. So I'll just take a little hit of acrylic varnish. You can even spray it. You'll be surprised that you can't even see that. It immediately makes it look like it's all been varnished at the same time.
I wondered about acrylic paintings that I put just that golden painted on varnish. Can I just paint, if I don't like something in it, can I just paint over top of that varnish, or do I have to take that varnish off?
No, you just paint right over top.
You can paint over top of it. The risk is that 50 years or 100 years down the road, which we really care,
No.
is if somebody was to restore your painting
Oh,
and remove the varnish. Now, you wouldn't do that with a watercolor. There's no, removing the varnish in that scenario.
Yeah.
But with an acrylic or an oil, somebody might down the road decide to remove the varnish to clean the painting and then restore it, and then your changes would.
That's exactly right. I don't even know if the museums will accept the way I do this.
Well, I think
But-
they do now, but
I think they,
it's just, the whole conservatory role has changed so much because of all of our mixing.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched that Day for Fortune?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Where they uncover another painting. and-
Yeah, they x-ray it, clean it, do all sorts of stuff.
Quite amazing.
Yeah. And you see some extremely old painting, 1,000-year-old painting, and what happens when you clean it, it comes back to life. It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's why paintings around in 1,000 years. It's a lovely rich color.
Mhm.
and that's just kind of the great thing about watercolor and having the acrylics too. So you make this beautiful color. You do have to worry about, or make sure that you have it strong enough so that you, when it dries, you know it's going to dry lighter. And this is all the beauty of actually working in an area and working it to completion, is that if you're jumping all over the place, you're kind of forgetting that this is going to dry lighter and you're going to have to go back and add more color. You can actually keep on working on this area till it looks like you don't have to go there anymore. And the acrylic can go right into a wet area. Of course, it's not going to always stay where it's placed, but you're gonna get some nice mixes of color. Now, one of the things that fascinated me about watercolor was, I saw this ad, and it was in an art magazine, and it was just a photograph of a close-up of watercolor. Now, normally I take my little magnifying glasses for people to look, because we as painters don't even sometimes look at how fascinating color is when it just kind of blends together. And I'm still quite impressed by watercolor, the way it behaves. It's like, again, like an act of God. It's not something that you did intentionally, and it's very beautiful to look at.
That's why it's so good to go to museums and see art up close, because you just don't realize what the brush strokes look like.
Just reading this book about making a Van Gogh, and how would you know? He's a madman anyway, but it's the experts can see the difference between. But we all have kind of different shades of gray. You don't know who you are today. I won't waste too much more time on this, but just showing you the and what you see this underpainting. If I don't do anything more to that, it'll be fine. There's areas of the painting that are all just untouched. They're just, all I did was paint the dark around it, and that is the color that was underneath. That is this color that I've done as a preliminary foundation background.
You do a lot of negative painting.
Yes, it's just painting around things that can make for a very interesting result.
You have a favorite brush?
This is it. Well, actually, it's not it. I had to get another one. I have this, all my brushes are square. And I have this particular brush that was, that is 1/8 inch square. I just like this squareness. I like them long bristled as well. But there was one particular brush that I'd used for 30 years. They don't make it anymore. So now I've been desperately trying to find a brush that kind of feels like is the way that one felt.
And you almost think about watercolor as using round brushes for the most part.
That's always been, I never used a round brush. I started painting with these. This is a 1 inch. This is 3/4. And that is this 1/2 inch square. And this is a 1/4 inch square. And all I try to do is manipulate the brush so you're getting edges. See, if you take this brush, and you take that, that's 1/8. But if you turn it, creates a bit of a point. So manipulating the brush is the same, just I like it the square. This is why you need clean water. So now just add a few more darks to that. Go back in. It's still wet. You can play with this area for quite a long time because it's going to stay wet for quite a long time as well. And you just reestablish some of those dark darks. This is the cobalt blue. If you take it in its purest form, all these little trays of color, they're quite mixed together. But if you tip them, there's pure cobalt blue at the bottom. And it's the same with the raw sienna. You tilt it, it sinks to the bottom. So if I wanted a nice hit of blue, I just drop it in. A lot of times what I do is I drop the color in, I don't manipulate the color. Because what you're doing is, you know, this is beautiful color, but I'll take this blue and that. And if I don't mix them, they'll come out separately. Somewhat. And what I'm trying to do is just pick up color, but not homogenize it, not over mix it. And then you're going to also eliminate the chances of making mud. With the quail.
So just explain to us what that is, because again, we can't quite see. That's going to be a background behind some leaves.
This here,
Yeah,
this would be this area here.
right.
If you put them side by side,
Right.
this is the dark area. And what I've done is I've helped to bring out some of the shapes, the other shapes of the grapes. And there's a little bit of masking here. So when it's done, I'll take the masking off and I'll have pure white. And then I can add some of these these colors are much more effective when they're painted on white. Because the luminosity of the white is going to shine through the color. Masking fluid, they have different ones. They have Windsor Newton makes one, but you can get some, because it does dry out fast, especially in this heat, then I just buy it inexpensive. But I use a brush with a little bit of soap on it. And it keeps the bristles from getting too gummy.
A friend of mine uses one of those rubber styluses for putting her masking fluid on.
Ah, yeah.
So that she doesn't wreck her brushes.
Oh,
So I thought that was a good idea.
that's a good idea because it's rubbery anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm still learning stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a good
I
idea.
don't know if it works, but maybe it does.
I'm gonna have to give that a try too. Oh, that's another boy. Supposed to be a girl. So I'll just take a little. Girls don't have that little yeah. Just drawing this little patch. And a little here. See that a little bit? What I did was this little patch here. It had a kind of like this
Right.
nail. And I just added this little bit of round.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, shit.
You're not muted.
That's a high drama.
It's really cool watching you mix these acrylic inks and fluids like that. So I just really thought to do that.
Yeah, and because it's all water-based, it's actually rather compatible.
It's really cool.
And the great thing about the acrylic is that it has some of the acrylics have really much more strength to them. So when they dry, they're going to be a little more pronounced.
Well, it makes a much nicer contrast.
Yeah, and you could just drop this in there and see what happens. It'll still look like a natural, like it was born that way sort of thing. A little bit of shadow. Now, one of the things I like to do, because there is this little bit of a patchwork here, I'll just take a pencil, instead of trying to guess, I'm just gonna make some marks in here. And there is a little bit of the way the feathers come down, there's a little bit of a patch of light white. So this is the problem with not doing what I told you to do, is mix the color ahead of time. Can't be perfect all the time, forever. Never perfect. But I'm just making a nice strong color for the back of the and you could mask out this little but I'm just painting around it and letting the surface of the painting bring out the light. Oftentimes, to try to create a little more, and this is why it's so nice to have the rough paper as well, is that instead of painting following the line absolutely smoothly, unnaturally, if you just drag your brush, you're going to get a much more so this is the edge of this little chickadee here. Instead of actually following the line absolutely, I'm going to just drag my brush. It's a little bit of a dry brush, and you're going to get a little more texture so that the edge of the chickadee is not perfect. And that's almost like replicating.
Is frozen.
Yeah, occasionally the video here just, like the Wi-Fi can't keep up. There he is.
So, you know, if you want your birds to feel a little more alive, and then you don't want them to be too perfectly smooth, just kind of drag your brush a little bit, and it'll ruffle the feathers, so to speak. Bless you. This brush, just have to turn it sideways a little bit. And then with one point. Usually use I do have black. And it's actually not ink, it's black acrylic paint. It's in the jar, it's liquid. It's very intense, very strong, and it's water, it's permanent. If you think that ink is permanent, I have an experience. I donated a painting to a high school. My wife now, but her daughter was graduating, so I donated a painting. And I had 7 chickadees in there, just like these little guys. And the person that bought it wanted an 8th one because their daughter was graduating. So I painted the extra one in there, but I varnished it. No, what I did. Anyways, I put some water on the painting because I thought it was all permanent. Well, this little chickadee, it was this cute little chickadee, and then the head exploded. I had to fix the painting. I had to kind of cover it all up with white paint, get it all nice and smooth again. But it was like this little one, and all of a sudden it was like an afro.
Oh, no.
It freaked me out. So now I use acrylic paint. And it's water soluble, it's permanent, it's just the way it is. But I tell you, that was a learning curve. Not fun. Because your painting is sold.
Yeah, right.
And they want it just the way it was. Well, I had to fix that. Now the head of the great thing about watercolor is that it's just spray it with a little bit of water and wick it up.
Do you have a favorite brand?
I do believe that Winsor Newton is best. It's the most intense. It's the best quality, but I am not opposed to using Holbein and Rembrandt. And Opus watercolors aren't too bad. They're not as good, but you know, it is, you get what you pay for. So sometimes paying more is worthwhile.
And you prefer the tubes to the pounds?
Yes, yeah. But all this is tube color, just dries. So it's like buying discs of color too, because when it dries, it's just like, but then you just take your water bottle, spray bottle, I mean, and wake it up. Bet you they're having some wine upstairs.
There's dancing classes upstairs and all.
What were they dancing?
Yeah, there's a lady that teaches various types of dancing.
Oh.
Most days and most evenings. They're not too thumpy.
No,
Sometimes they get pretty heavy-footed across the ceilings like that tonight. They're colliding.
Is it a ballroom? No, this is not this music.
I know that she teaches all kinds of different kinds of music, so I'm not really sure what's on the agenda.
Right now, if you see that patch, there is a leaf going across there. It's just a white right now, but I'll put something. And you know what I try to do is step outside of the norm. So because it's a painting, I don't make these grape leaves look exactly like grape leaves. And I don't paint them all green or brown or red. I kind of, a lot of times I'm guided by the colors that are already there. And I'll just go with your own personal feeling about how it's developing. And I will, you know, kind of take a look at the whole painting and put colors almost in a kind of a triangulation, kind of a, just so that there's a little balance to it as well. I'll show you this is the, put this in a little bag because it's the most dangerous color in my, it's the black. And so it does, sometimes it escapes, it's not nice. It's what I sign my signature with, and it's usually what I paint my, anything black. Black-cap chickadees, red-winged blackbirds. This is an acrylic, so it's all entirely acrylic on canvas, but it's done on a black background. So all the whales are actually just painted around them and painted the white patches on top. Some of them are needed to be a little lighter, so you just kind of tone them down so they're not quite so pure black. It'd be great if this twisted in my hand and this big black thing went right across the page. Oh, we can't see this as well as.
No,
The girl was just a little,
tiny.
but she's still the boss. I know that. That was watercolor, and this is the black. I feel like it's much more truer black. With a little bit of this is the raw sienna. Has a little bit of black and it's dirtied up into it. But, yeah. So this is a gradation of light to dark. So when you look at the breast or the bottom side, it's light and it comes down to dark. I just applied a little bit of color. And let that soften up. And then I'll take some red. I'll drop it in. And as it progresses down, I'll pick up some blue. And that'll shadow that reddish brown color. And that'll create more contrast against that leaf.
Wondering why it was like blurry. It's focusing on his hair.
Me?
No, the camera. You just keep going.
Okay. So as it dries, you can see it's going to be lighter and lighter. So you kind of stay with it, apply a little more, just drop a little more color in there, and it'll naturally grade out. And then when it's all dry, that is that. I take a nice fine long bristle. Long bristle brushes I prefer them because they hold a lot more paint. So you can go a long way with one brush stroke. Mix a nice. This is cadmium red. and a little bit of indigo. It could be ultramarine blue, but just a nice dark, rich color. Yeah, you can't see what I'm doing, so right there. I do this to every table I go visit, so they just have to clean it up. I can clean it up. Sometimes when your color gets a little bit thick, just take a little bit of that moisture, that kind of red to it, and just add a little bit of more wetness to it. Then I just do a scallop. You know, we just don't have a ton of time to show you everything, but there's so many other aspects of painting that we can. So you just keep on going till you finish the bowl. Okay. And then after it's dry, you can actually go back over it and gray it down a bit more.
So how do you gray it down?
You just paint over top of it. So if I were to, I don't finish that right now. I'll just take some of this, because it's transparent too.
Right.
So when you take a transparent, you place it on top of the color. So if the color is yellow, if I take the transparent cobalt blue, and for instance, here, that's because it's kind of a burnt sienna color, but because the blue has a little transparency to it, if I go over top of that, it's like laying a little bit of a blue sheet of plastic on top of your burnt sienna, and it grays it down. So that creates, it still maintains that burnt sienna color, but it's got a little bit more shadow to it. And so what I was saying about this area through here, if by the time I finish this, and I want to actually add more shadow, then I can actually go right over top, but gently. You don't want to disturb the line work that you.
Yeah, I see that now on the female over
Yeah,
behind you.
it gets quite
darker.
deep in
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And you can see that it's not that deep here,
right.
so you can actually just go over top of it. And it didn't actually change the line. Sorry, not. You didn't get to see this part. That area is what we're talking about. So if that area, when I finish with this, I can always go over top.
You've got about 20 minutes left, Alex.
Okay. Thank you. So you can see it's quite bright. And if you want to really just kind of make it less obvious, and you can tone it down by glazing over it. just a bit.
Beautiful.
So a lot of the depth gets filled up a little bit in layers too, I guess.
Yes, I try to do this, kind of successful areas, but there's always kind of more work to do. You can always add more color and deepen the shadows, soften edges. For instance, this, it's always kind of, what I look for is if the areas become very similar in value, there's no actually contrast, then that tells me that I want to add more color here to make that look lighter. And even in this point, you can actually add some shadow, but you can add more detail too. So if this is a vineyard, the most important, I used to paint vineyards with no vines. Well, it's not really a vineyard if it doesn't have vines, but it took me years to figure out that my paintings just were a bunch of leaves and grapes, and when you add some of this texture, it adds movement. When you add some negative and positive shapes, it adds more contrast, more life to your painting. So everything kind of leads your viewer's eye through the painting. So what we're trying to do is give as much information to our viewer to give them that feeling that they're want to buy your painting. Well, that's part of it. But. But I always say it's always a matter of when people come walking into a show, you want them to see your painting first. And it's your job to put as much detail into your painting or feeling into it that they're going to say, I love that. I love that painting. Makes me feel good. And I always think that if we can do that, then succeeded in life. So here, take some of this. I'll take some of this red and some of the blue. And now this is dry. I'll just gently go over the top of it. Just add a bit more volume to it so it feels more like a rounded. And you're not disturbing the work that you did underneath. And it creates a little more roundness to it. But oftentimes too, if those edges are coming together, if you just go right over that into that other neighboring area, you're not having an overlap, or you're not creating these lines all over. It's just kind of seamless, I suppose. And one of the things I can show you that's because of this intense light, it's going to be shining down through here. So if you take some of this raw sienna and fairly nice clean brush, paper towel just in case, and a dry brush. So we know what dry brush is. It's just the brush stroke is dancing on the surface of the painting, so it's not all filling up the surface. Take a little bit of what I did with this one here. There's a very small hint of color, just to accentuate that feeling that the sun is shining down. So I'll take a little bit of this. Fill up my brush. And do a kind of a brush stroke. And drag your brush so that some of this color gradates out. And you can always drop in a little bit more color. What you're trying to do is create that sense of light. There's a little sailboat here, so you can drop in a little movement. These areas through here, just to maintain that softness, and just drag that brush so that it creates that feeling of. And you can do the same this way. Clean brush. Drag it. Take a little out. And one of the things that I like to do when the painting is still wet is I'll take some of this color that you mixed beforehand, and if it's not too wet, it's always a degree of moisture. And this is a very strong mix. I'll put it in there, and you're going to get a. I want to make sure the color is nice and strong, but if you put it in when it's still wet, it'll have this softness to it. And take your favorite color, which happens to be cadmium orange. Just take a little dab and drop it in there. So they pick grapes around the fall, so you can actually, I just picked up a little red, and you can make it fall.
So what is that? I'm just, I can't even see
Oh,
what that is.
Well,
Are those,
that is the hills.
okay,
It's right beside the lake.
right,
It's this area. That's this area through here.
right.
I'm just developing some a feeling of trees and
Suggested.
Right.
take a little bit of gold, drop it in there. Take a different green. You know, you can just kind of play with it, but key is just to make sure that it's not too wet, because your paint is going to spread. And it's a kind of a learning curve, to figure out how wet it is, and
So it just softens the edge of those trees, right?
so they don't look like they're actually just,
Right. Blobs.
yeah, they're just floating in the. And that's taking advantage of this wet, the wetness here. You get some hard edged trees, and you get some soft ones. And you can add your gold. And if you, I didn't squeeze it out, but this is, and as it, you know, it's always kind of gets away from you. So you just want to keep an eye on it, take out some color when you want a little more light in there. Remember, this was a brush. So I picked up paint, but now it's got paint in there. So if you, you are going to dab with a clean, I've learned that from experience. Just kind of happens. This is actually another acrylic. This is iridescent copper, but it has another, you know, nice quality to it because it's shiny. And as you can see, how dark they were. That just is a natural part of this watercolor. Is that no matter even if it's black, sometimes they will dry lighter. So you just gotta go back in there and reinforce some of those edges.
How do you find it when you use the acrylics? Do they do as much when they're dry, or like
They
in terms of you dropping acrylic? If you,
do they
do they
Lighten up?
lighten up as much?
some do, reds do, but what happens is if it's wet, some of that intensity is going to dissipate some of the color. So then you have to kind of pay attention if you want it to be stronger and just add a bit more. Yeah, see, if I take this, it's pure. And when you put it in there, it stays just the way it came out of the tube, so to speak. And I just find that get that instant satisfaction.
So we've got a question from Janice about, do you use those iridescent colors? I think that's what she said.
Yeah. So iridescent copper in the tube, iridescent gold. Now, like I pointed out, this is 24 karat gold, and this is actually, it's not exactly the same, but it represents it well.
Yeah.
So you get that in your work, and it makes the painting shine a little bit more. Now, is there a part of the painting that I can do for you that you'd like to see something?
No, she's
She's
got another.
She wants
Janice, if
to
you just
know.
want to unmute yourself, Janice, and you can ask directly.
Oh yeah, I just wondered if you use those acrylic iridescence paints when you are working with, when you're working with acrylic paints, not just watercolor.
Yes, actually, shiny color is good anytime.
Oh, okay.
Anything to make your painting look better. Hope this stays there. You see these little fish that are swimming? That's an acrylic on canvas. And these little fish have gold in them. There's much gold there. Just little blobs of gold. So yes, and it just looks like a piece of jewelry.
Wow, that's very cool. Thank you.
They are.
If you want people to come up and go, what's that? I think that's the best thing you can do for get your viewers to come up and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody likes something shiny.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, bling. But is there some other part of the painting I can address that will help answer some questions?
Or maybe we could go on to questions. Does anybody have questions for Alex?
I think this has really opened my eyes to using, you know, acrylics and different inks and everything in watercolor. It's just very, really cool. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. When you go to Opus and you want to buy everything on the shelf, well, you want to find a way to use it. And that was the key for me to this beautiful shining color and make it see when you get your you would take that out of the
Your pencil line.
then you take
Oh, that's your confetti.
that's a grape, but some of it's confetti. So when you have a spot which has confetti, you take those. That's your, and then you take the complement, the opposite to blue is orange. And you put a little bit of that in there. And you can actually, knowing that we're gonna work with a little gradation and a little bit of where the light's coming from, you can just put some down and then soften it up. So that the top of the has a little bit of light. It's very subtle.
Like,
But you know, it's a,
Yeah.
it's a combination of all the little elements that you put into your painting that is gonna make it a much more interesting painting. Like a piece of music is not just one part, it's all the sum total of all the parts.
You use all of your pencil.
Yes, yeah. Now Albert Dürer has pencil marks on his drawings, but I don't. Rembrandt apparently does too, but I just find that they're distracting, so I take them. You can erase all the pencil for the most part. If the paint doesn't cover it, then you can actually erase underneath the paint. I use a HB pencil is soft, it's in between, so it doesn't, it's not too hard and it's not too soft, so it's fairly easy to remove.
And your eraser,
And then
what kind is your eraser?
it's a Statler and it's the best one I found because it's soft. But it's sturdy. And it helps to remove most of the pencil lines. It doesn't seem to disturb the paint. So it's worth $2.90.
Do you market your work as watercolor or water media?
Watercolor. I don't regard it as a mixed media or a water media. It's just watercolor. And if anybody asks, I talk about the American Watercolor Society and what they call a watercolor. I'm happy with that explanation. I think it doesn't have to be complicated about mixing.
Mhm.
Yeah. But you know, I've done paintings where I apply a little pastel, oil pastel, just on top to jazz it up. And I could call it a mixed media at that point, but I think it's just art. So we don't, unless you get into when I'm dead, well, that's going to be big. Yeah.
Well, that was excellent, Alex. We really enjoyed that. It was very good.
Thank
Lots
you.
of information and opens our eyes to watercolor. I mean, wow.
Yeah, it's a great medium because it just changes. And you can do the same painting 10 times and not one of them will be the same.
Yeah.
I just want to show you guys, I don't know if I'll be able to, whether this camera will give you much or not, but Alex brought, where are we looking? There we are. Okay. Alex brought some paintings with him to show us, and they're just amazing.
Wow.
Not a very good camera there to actually take a look at that. And it's attached to my computer, so I can't move it.
But as I was saying, you know, when you do this foundation, this initial painting, a lot of the color that you end up with is the original color that was here. So I didn't have to paint that. It was already there. All I did was put some contrasting color beside it. And so it saves you time, but you get this natural look. You're not filling it up, it's just there. So it just helps to make the painting look more natural.
That one is just amazing with all the wine glasses and
Yes, where's the
wow.
wine?
There's
Oh,
chickens,
wow.
goldfish. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I come back, but I was just kidding. Well, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I hope you want to. You're not already doing it. Doing it is fun.
Yeah.